Hey folks, it is the Nutty Knife Guy. I'm going to do something just a little bit different this time. You might kind of call it a public service announcement. Go figure. Oh, I guess maybe I better see if I can light myself just a little bit better without blinding you guys. And I guess that's going to have to do. Anyway, that's not going to work. Anyway, due to our recent Supreme Court decision, it's going to be a lot easier for a lot of citizens in this country to carry a concealed firearm. I'm going to use the word term firearm and gun and not high-velocity freedom seeking dispensers this time because, let's just put it this way. If this video suddenly gets banned, it's because YouTube despises the Second Amendment and the Constitution in general. Okay, but anyway, everybody knows that part of the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I think it was the Temple of Doom. But anyway, Indiana Jones is confronted by this guy that's flourishing a big old scimitar or talwar sword, and Indy casually draws a firearm and puts the guy down. And I laughed as hard as anybody else. And there's that old cliche from The Untouchables with the great Sean Connery, never bring a knife to a gunfight. Okay, funny, but untrue and not practical. Perhaps it should read, not bring only a knife to a gunfight, because that would be bad. But there are a whole lot of reasons that you should, and I would say must, that's an opinion, carry a knife if you carry a firearm all the time for personal protection. And the reason is this. There's, first of all, firearms retention. Nobody is perfect. People make mistakes. People make tactical mistakes. They make mistakes in situational awareness. And you could get bum rushed and jumped by somebody and wind up fighting for your firearm. It happens to police. It happens in the military. It happens to civilians. The guy's a little quicker than you are. Or maybe he jumps you and you do shoot him, but it doesn't hit him in a vital spot and it doesn't stop him. It might be more than one person and you get bum rushed. It can happen. Now, there are all kinds of taekwondo, judo, jiu-jitsu stuff that you can learn to get back your firearm, and I highly recommend you find a qualified instructor and learn that. I'm not going to show you any of those because I'm not a qualified instructor. I have been to some I've trained with some qualified instructors, but I am not myself a qualified instructor. Right. But you have to maintain control of your firearm, and that's what some people don't understand. I'm going to use this in a context as a law enforcement officer, former law enforcement officer, but in law enforcement context. But it's true for civilians who carry too. You cannot allow yourself to be disarmed. You cannot allow somebody to take that gun away from you, unless, of course, it's legal and lawful, and a law enforcement officer, surrender your weapon. Do that. But if somebody just tries to take the gun away from you to steal the gun, or they have been committing some other kind of assault against you, and you've had tried to deploy your gun, and for whatever reason, you wind up fighting over your gun, you cannot allow yourself to be disarmed or incapacitated where they can disarm you. Because what are they going to do with that gun once they get it away from you? Possibly use it on you, maybe use it on somebody else. You have to keep control of that firearm. And that seems, I know that seems very just common sense, but I had an instance where I found out maybe it's not. We had some people over for the 4th, and they noticed I was carrying a knife. I always carry a knife over here in right hand cross draw on my left side, so I can get it out with my dominant hand, or I can get to it with my weak hand. This is the Smith & Wesson SW7. I've reviewed it. But I always carry some kind of a knife in that location. Somebody noticed it, and they knew that I carry a firearm all the time. Why you carry the knife and the gun? And I explained to protect the gun, to make sure. And, well, you know, if somebody tries to take your gun, why don't you just shoot them? Because if somebody's trying to take your gun, they have a hold of your gun. Or they have a hold of you, and you're using your hands for other things, you can't get your gun out. A gun is not always the best tool for a given personal protection situation. But now we're going to have a lot of people, because it's easier to carry guns. In my state, you don't even have to go through any training anymore. It's a constitutional carry state as of a few months ago, which means if you can legally own a firearm, you can legally carry it concealed, and it's also legal to carry it open here. So there's going to be a lot more people carrying concealed. Great, I love that. Welcome to the club, more the merrier. But I urge anybody that is doing that, please get some training, and please also carry a knife for the purpose of personal protection. Generally, I carry 4 or 5 knives around when I'm around the house. That's the reason I do that is, one, I'm the nutty knife guy, and there are a lot of other reasons. But even when I'm around the house, I carry 2 knives. I carry the personal protection knife, and I carry some sort of folder. In this case, today is the Balker Kalashnikov out the front. The folders are not primarily for personal protection. I don't think anybody, unless they absolutely have to, should use a folder for a primary personal protection knife. Again, reasons for that are another video. But the thing is this: if you wind up grappling for your gun, this is an airsoft gun, note the pink tip. Okay. But if you wind up grappling for your gun, yeah, there are push-pull techniques and joint manipulations, everything. Learn those if you can. Go find an instructor. You need them. Okay. But the best thing to be able to do is to get a good grip on your firearm with your dominant hand. Right. Deploy something like this, and deploy a knife. Cut his hands, stab at his face. If they're stabbing at his face, when they see something like this coming at you, it's a pointy eye, things coming in your throat and eyes. It's like this basic, visceral, primal response to get away from it. And to do that, they've got to let go of your gun. And I said, and people wind up fighting for their gun all the time. You can go on a really excellent website called Active Self-Protection with John Correa. I don't know Mr. Correa. I don't have any affiliations with his site, but I watch it a lot. And what he does is he takes security footage or any kind of camera footage of real-life personal protection and breaks it down from his standpoint as an expert firearms and personal protection instructor. You can go on his site and find all kinds of videos where people wind up fighting for the gun. And in that instance, he has a really good saying. At that point, once he's coming for your gun and you're grappling over it, it's not your gun anymore, it's our gun. You both have possession of it because you both have hands on it. Now, in most cases, if it's your gun, you have a better position, you're in a better grip, because you're holding it where it's intended to be held at, and you have a better grip on it. But anecdote from that, an anecdote. I read a story about a police officer, and he got a call that police officers get all the time, domestic disturbance. But what he didn't know in this particular instance is somebody had called in a phony domestic disturbance because they wanted to steal that officer's gun. They knew he was going to have a gun. So he goes in and he initiates the call. The guy that called him is out on the porch of this residence. He goes in and initiates the call. No warning whatsoever. The guy comes up and zaps him with pepper spray. The officer gets hit with like half can of pepper spray. It was awful. right? But this officer stays in the fight. He's not as incapacitated as the bad guy wanted. The guy goes for his gun as a holster. Now, a lot of law enforcement use retention holsters, and these holsters are holsters where there is a certain way you have to manipulate the gun before it comes out. You can't just pull it out of the holster, it won't come out. It's designed to keep police officers from being disarmed. I'm not going to tell you how to get them out because, first of all, they all have, there's a bunch of different ways that you do it, but I'm not even going to talk about that. But the whole idea is that they don't get disarmed. So he had a retention holster, but he also went right into his retention drill. Jammed the gun down on the holster at first with two hands to keep it in the holster. But once he had one good hand keeping that gun in his holster, he whipped out a knife and started going at the guy. Now there was a lot of controversy, and once the guy let go of him, he pulled a gun and shot him. Now there's a lot of controversy over that because the guy at that point really wasn't armed. He had been stabbed, and the man did expire. And they were accusing the police officers of using excessive force because the guy wasn't armed. Now, think about this. What would that guy have done if he'd have managed to get that firearm? And that officer didn't know if he had a knife, didn't know if he had partners running around, and he was still recovering from the pepper spray. Right? But he could not allow himself to be disarmed. And still not completely capable of defending himself because the pepper spray was still in his face. He made a decision that that threat had to end now. I support that decision. But whether he was right or wrong doesn't matter in this context. The point of it was he kept control of his firearm and he's still alive. So don't bring a knife to a gunfight? No. Don't bring only a knife to a gunfight. I strongly, in the strongest terms I know how, carry some sort of knife, make it a fixed blade, and learn to deploy it and use it with your weak hand. Here's another one. This is a Schrade Karambit. I don't know the model number. They always have those great big long numbers. I've reviewed this. There are some instances where I carry this for my retention, usually when I want to make circumspect because this is very small and it's very discreet. Right? But again, somebody's got a hold of this hand, trying to wrest my gun away from it, keep control with this hand, turn my side away, deploy this out from this side, slash his hands. Now, karambits are great for this. I'm not a big fan of karambits for your primary personal protection knife, but for this they're great because you can bring that down and just if he's got his hands and he's on there, you can stick this down, you can hook that, you can use this and really cut into his hands, and you can still have a very effective sewing machine for his face and throat. Now, I know I'm going to do the whole cover my ass disclaimer thing. This is for good people that have been attacked by a bad person trying to take their legally carried firearm away from them and deploying appropriate force to keep themselves from being disarmed and killed. Okay? This is not any instruction for criminal endeavor. But anyway, you have to ask yourself, what's going to make him let go of that gun? Being able to, do the push-pull technique and try to do a joint lock. What's going to make him let go faster? All the jiu-jitsu stuff, or a sharp, pointy thing coming at his face and eyes, or slashing the tendons and muscles that keep his hands together. That's basically it. But also, I do want to say, when you hear about somebody who shoots at somebody, especially police officers, who shoot somebody that does not have a gun or a knife, even a knife in their hand, that they say is unarmed, I ask you to remember this about the police officers. I know there's probably going to be some idiot that's going to give me some Schrade comment about police officers and fighting ability and all this other stuff, because they have seen every single episode of Law and Order and they know better. A police officer cannot allow himself to be incapacitated. Even if it's somebody that's, going to punch him like, well, he's a great big huge guy, or a boxer or something like that, that might just be able to knock him out with one punch. He can't allow that. He cannot allow himself to be knocked out, and then the guy has access to everything that's on the belt: his gun, his pepper spray, his duty knife, maybe his backup gun, keys to his car. He goes into his car, gets a shotgun, maybe a patrol rifle. You see what I mean? Police officers can't allow that, and neither can civilian concealed carry people. You can't allow yourself somebody to take your gun, maybe use it on you, or maybe go use somebody else. So a guy gets somebody in a chokehold. You're getting a chokehold on the street, or a cop does. Cut him off his air. Might kill him. Will definitely, eventually, he will pass out. If you can't get out any other way, yes, if you have some martial arts training, you can turn your chin into the elbow and manipulate the elbow and get him in a joint lock and all the Taekwondo stuff. That can work. But what is sure? What is more likely to work? Popping this out and starting to jab at his arm, or backwards through this way, or some Taekwondo stuff. And the same thing with the gun. If you've got a hold of your gun, Bruce Lee-o, or starting to poke holes in it. Right? And even if it's like a great big brawler that is outweighed by 200 pounds, and looks like he mainlines steroids for his Wheaties, they could conceivably knock you out in one punch, or just knock you out in one punch, or just squeeze the life out of you. You cannot allow that to happen. Even if he doesn't kill you, he grabs your gun and maybe kills somebody else with it. So I want people to bear that in mind. A lot of people, I don't think they think this through. Oh, he was unarmed. Another incident. This I think I saw on Donut Operator. A couple of police are called to a wedding because there's a belligerent man there. He's drunk, and he's accosting all the wedding goers. And this guy is huge. I think they said he was 6'5" and 365 pounds of solid muscle, and it looked like it. Right? And they tried to de-escalate. They tried to get him to leave. They decided they have to take, but then they decided to have to take him into custody. His sister, he's like, oh man, don't arrest him, he's not doing anything. And he was doing anything. He was on security camera. He was pushing people around, trying to keep from going in. Right? Chaos ensues, and he cold cocks one of the officers. Punches him. The officer's got a badge cam on. You can just, all of a sudden, you see that guy smack him, and the camera goes like this, and he's looking up, and it's looking straight up. Right? The guy then takes a taser from another officer, and the taser doesn't work. Interesting facts about taser. They have about a 40% fail rate. A lot of things have to go right for a taser to work right, and they don't always do that. But that's a whole other discussion. But tasers don't always work. And he tackles the other cop. The other guy winds up on his belly, face down, with this brute on top of him pounding him. He manages to turn over, draws his gun, and pops him 5 times in the chest. Now, people freak out. Well, he didn't have a gun. Blah, blah. Okay. Look at it from the officer's point of view. His partner's down. He's not moving. Not even really sure if he's still alive. That guy didn't wake up for a full 2 minutes. And if you take a pop like that when you do wake up, and from my days when I was younger and leaner and many years and many pounds ago, I've been knocked out. You don't just get right up, back up and get into action. It takes a while. But anyway, his partner's completely out of action. They don't have any other help. Right? This brute has been beating on him. Outweighs the officer quite a bit. Right? Now, a lot of people say, well, he could have done this, he could have done that, he gouged his eyes, do some hoist crazy jujitsu magic or something like that. But the thing of it is, that officer wasn't Hoist Gracie. He wasn't Juno Jean LaBelle. He was a guy that probably had 20 or 30 hours of combatives training. Maybe gets to practice that with a competent instructor a couple of times a year if he's lucky. Right? And this guy had just been hit with a taser that didn't seem to faze him at all. Knocked out his partner in one punch. You see? So a gun isn't always the right tool. And also just give people the credit when you anytime. And now you take them by case basis. There might be a case when a police officer fired and they shouldn't have used his gun and they shouldn't have. Same thing with a civilian self-defense or personal protection situation. Okay, but just don't, whoa, you shot an unarmed man. Okay, yeah, but try to take that in context. Second reason that you need to carry a knife if you're carrying a gun. You look at the violence when a bunch of people decided it was okay to burn buildings and loot and pillage and plunder, and a lot of times police were ordered to just let them burn, pillage, and plunder. You could be confronted in a situation where you're in a mob scene. 5, 6 people come at you at once, and you don't have to do anything to provoke them. You come out, and there was a video went around. Some lady was just coming out of a grocery store, and she was just assailed by 3 or 4 people. And nobody could ever really say why, other than they wanted to, and she was a little old lady that couldn't defend herself, and they were a bunch of freaking cowards, right? She didn't have a gun, and she didn't have a knife, but in that situation, if you're coming out of a grocery store and you get a flash mob or something, whatever, or something like that, 5 or 6 people, that's more and more common these days. Okay, even if you manage to get your gun out, you've got people this close to you, that close to you. Okay. You go down and you're trying to get your concealment garment, however you carry, getting it out. You're taking your hand out from defending you because these guys are trying to grab you. Maybe they're trying to punch you. Instead of having your hand down here, you have to move your hand. Right? You're going to have to do that with a knife anyway, but just trying to set the scene here. But then you have people all around you, maybe even behind you, unless you manage to get your back up against the wall. Right? Your gun has to do this. Right? They're too close. You're not going to be able to get out into a proper firing stance. Right? Again, airsoft. Okay? You're not going to be able to get that out. If you get it out, it's going to be here. Maybe here if you're lucky, but better back here. Right? Now, there are 3 or 4 people here. It's behind you. Maybe you're in public, so there might be completely innocent people around there filming it all on their cell phones instead of calling the police or trying to help you. Right? And they're jumping around, doing it like this. Even at that distance, you can miss. And if you don't miss, even with a good expanding round like Spear Gold Dot or Federal HST or Hornady Critical Defense or whatever, at that range it might go through and then hit somebody, an innocent person. Right? A whole bunch of people, somebody gets you from behind, right? I mean, they come up and you wind up fighting for your gun again. But this time, it's a whole bunch of people. Might it be better not to get your gun out at all and have something like this, because this can go in any direction. Right? They are much less likely to try and grab a nice sharp knife than they are to try to grab this. Now, once they can get close enough to grapple, they get a hold of your gun like this. This whole frame of your gun becomes a lever that they can use to rip right out of your hand. Right? Not to say that they can't grab the blade or they won't grab the blade, but they're much less likely to do so. And you can kind of cut your way out of that problem. Even with the smaller one, like the Karambit here, and you're using, because you still want to keep your, all right. And even if you carry like a smaller one like a Karambit, I'm going to hold this forward grip for the sake of demonstration. Right? Again, you can poke. I mean, you can poke. You can actually thrust. You can go, and you can go in any direction. You're not probably in that situation. You're very unlikely to hit anybody that's innocent. And when people start seeing that every time your arms move, somebody starts bleeding, it gives you it might give you some distance to get away, or if need be, deploy your firearm, or whatever, right? And it's not a perfect solution. But what I'm really trying to say is, since there's going to be so many more people out there that are going to be carrying firearms, I noticed since the law passed a couple of months, went into effect a couple of months here in Ohio, where you don't have to have any kind of a permit to carry concealed as long as you're legally allowed to firearm. Not an attorney. Check your laws for yourself. All that other good stuff. Right. What I've noticed is a lot of people didn't seem to understand the law as it was anyway. You were allowed to open carry in most places in Ohio anyway before this law. It was concealed carry that you needed a permit for, and now you don't need that. But I've noticed a lot more people in my area now carrying openly. Now, I don't know if these guys are carrying concealed and now are carrying openly or not, but what I think is a lot of people thought that you weren't allowed to carry openly to begin with, and now you are, and now they're carrying openly. I'm not a big fan of open carry for civilians, but that's another video too. But my point is here, and I'm not an expert, and I should have put this at the beginning. I'm not an expert, I'm not an instructor. I did say I was not a qualified instructor. But to me, this is just good common sense. There's no reason not to carry a knife if you're carrying a gun. There's a lot of reasons to carry a knife if you're carrying a gun. And also, while I'm thinking about it, I think I've got one handy here. Flashlight. If you're carrying a gun all the time and you're new to it because of this new law, flashlight. Chances are, if you get into a situation where you are legally able to, it's legal to use your gun in a defensive situation, chances are that assault that triggers the use of that firearm is going to take place at night, and you can't shoot what you can't see. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on a fantastic flashlight. This is one I think I got at a Rural King for, no, this was from Walmart, for about $1. Now, is it the bestest flashlight, you know, Streamlight, O-Light, whatever out there that you're going to pay $100 for, and it's got 4,000 million lumens? In a pinch, if you hold it on a spotlight enough, you can melt through a cinder brick wall with it? No. This is probably maybe 60 lumens, but you know what? It's small, it's light, you can have it, and it will light up anything you might have to shoot in a legal in a situation where you're legally allowed to shoot. All right. So, I mean, to me, that's basic. If you're carrying a gun, a knife and a flashlight, a small flashlight or something like that, is absolutely vital. So I think that's about it. I'm not going to ramble anymore. But I do want to make another disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. I am not by any means an expert on the use of force. I'm not an expert on knives. I'm not an expert on guns. The only thing I'm an expert at is not being an expert. But I think it's just important to point this out and get people to think in a different way. If you start carrying a gun, and if you start carrying a gun every day for personal protection, you really need to start thinking in a different way. It's almost like adopting another lifestyle. But you cannot allow somebody to take that gun away from you. And as I said, unless it's a legal officer and he's requesting you to hand over your gun in a legal and lawful manner, then by all means comply. But you cannot let somebody, for instance, assault you in a public restroom and take your gun. If you open carry, and I really wish you wouldn't open carry as a civilian, but again, you know, do what you think is best. You cannot allow yourself to be disarmed. So carry a knife to protect your gun. Carry a knife in case the situation demands that you, in a situation where a knife is better than a gun for personal protection, and those situations exist. And also go out and get training. Learn how to fight with a gun. There is a difference between just shooting and knowing how to fight using a firearm. There's actually a big difference there. So get some training, carry a knife, carry a flashlight, and remember that the knife is not always the best tool. If you're a mechanic, right, sometimes you need a wrench, sometimes you need pliers.